and welcome to our webinar series for differentiated instruction using adaptive tools. Just want to thank you for your time and being with us today. My name is Sarish Chuja, and I'm a marketing manager at McGraw Hill. In the next 60 minutes, you will be learning more about the McGraw Hill Wonders program. So we will be covering lesson structures that you can use for an effective ELA instruction, along with exploring digital and print components. We will also be talking about additional instructions on specific topics to ensure mastery and how you can match the grade levels. So stay tuned with us. I think I mentioned this is a 60-minute session. We will end. You're free to ask questions towards the end or in the chat box. I am your moderator for today, Sarish, like I said, and my colleague Hamad is joining me as well. And we will be in the background to help you if you have any questions at all or you're facing any technical difficulties during the session. Please let me know. My sound is very soft. Is it, Jessica?
I can hear you clearly on my side.
Okay, so Kylie, why don't you put it's clear for me. Excellent. Good afternoon. Okay, moving on. Like I said, any questions at all, please let me know and we can help you out if you're having any issues. I want to introduce Jessica with you, Jessica Humphrey. Thank you, Jessica, for being here. Some of you might already know her. She's done numerous workshops with us in training sessions. She has had a classroom teacher for 8 years, so she's come with a lot of experience here. Thank you, Jessica, for being with us today. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'm super excited to be here with everyone.
Yes, and she's done a lot of workshops for like ELA, math, science, and social studies, specifically for instruction. So I'm very excited to hear what Jessica has in store for us today. And I want to go over the housekeeping as well. I just want to tell you that you will get a certificate for the session if you're attending the live web session. And we will be sharing the recording as well. Just covering that bit because I know it's a very popular one. You will get the recording of the session. And at this point, I do want to remind you that your chat box is actually set to host and panelist. So if you can just click on the drop down here and select everyone, then all your colleagues and peers and everyone in this session will be able to view your comments. So just hit on the drop down button for me and select everyone. I think it's set to host and panelist for now. What else am I missing out on? I think that's it for now. We do have a couple of series of webinars that we have lined up for you. I am going to drop the link in the chat box in case you want to register. So we do have ELA math instruction next week. We've got math growth webinar next week. And you can just AP advanced placement as well. I'm going to drop the link in the chat box so you'll be able to register if you want to for any upcoming sessions as well. Unless you have any questions for me, let me know. Otherwise, yeah, I'll hand over to Jessica then. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I'm going to have the chat box open up over here to the side. So if at any point in time you have questions or other comments that you'd like to make about what we are discussing, absolutely feel free to add that there into the chat. Welcome, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started in exploring Wonders and what it has to offer. We are going to be going over just a little bit of overview information first, and then we're going to be taking a look at that instructional path that also includes differentiation tools in there so that we can really maximize our instruction with students with varying needs. And then we're also going to be taking a look at technology and how that can best support you, particularly in how that addresses planning as well as the differentiation with our students. So first off, just to kind of get us started with an overview and really understanding kind of the premise here of Wonders, everything that we're going to see across the grade levels is based on connected literature text sets. And this is going to be based on a unifying essential question. So no matter if our students are working within the anchor text, read alouds, shared reads, paired selections, or other guided reading materials, we're still going to be seeing that support of answering that essential question, as well as addressing a cohesive set of skills and standards that we are addressing for the course of that week with those students. That sample that we just saw was from a first grade, but as we see across grade levels, even up into fourth and fifth grade, we are still seeing a cohesive, connected literature text set as it pertains to, again, whole group instruction where we might see those anchor texts and the shared read, but also through small group and independent reading with guided reading and leveled readers. All of our text sets are going to focus on encouraging students to see that connectivity across whole group and small group experiences. And so what our students are learning about in terms of foundational skills such as phonics and vocabulary and spelling, they're going to see those elements applied into their literature that they are reading. We're going to see the same writing focus across all of the different elements of our literature, as well as within whole group and small group instruction. And so there is a lot of support there for you in terms of if you've seen students that are struggling with a whole group concept, you will then also have a variety of small group and independent resources for students to continually practice, as well as additional instructional elements. As we are looking at some of the teacher edition planning pages and other resources, some of the really fantastic elements that I see here do incorporate active engagement in learning resources and topics. And so very clearly labeled what students should be learning about, how they can be documenting their learning, but then also for you to very clearly see what are our student outcomes and expectations for this upcoming text set or genre study, as well as what's going to be part of that assessment piece as well. What is it that our students are going to be expected to show a certain level of mastery for? And this again is going to help you with that differentiation piece, where students will be able to either practice digitally or in that small group or independent setting with you based on what are those bigger goals for that upcoming week of instruction. Now, when we're talking about text sets, we're going to be seeing key concepts in that essential question right at the top there on the left-hand side of the page, and all of the literature that students are going to be reading and actively engaged in are going to promote and foster an understanding of those questions and those concepts, and really giving students an opportunity to apply their understanding of the text as it answers those questions, and really inspires them to take action or make connections into their own life and other literature that they've read. And so as we work our way through the shared reads and the authentic texts, and we move into those leveled readers and independent reading, know that our focus then is going to be asking students to do some deeper level thinking and connect those texts into other areas of their life as well. Now with writing, for example, here, we're really going to be utilizing those literature components to spark and jumpstart our writing instruction as well. And so this just goes with that super connected aspect of the Wonders instruction, so that we are taking those anchor texts and those shared reads, and we're guiding students through instruction as it pertains to analytical writing, where they are able to write about what they've read, utilizing text evidence, and are able to respond to what they've been reading as well. Now, those models, those expert anchor texts, are now going to be the basis for our genre writing. So these texts that students are already familiar with, that they've already been working at a deeper level with, are now going to be the basis for their writing instruction as well. We'll be guiding students through specific targeted instruction to notice and really draw attention to the craft of writing as we're seeing here in these expert models, and then giving students the chance to practice and incorporate that into their own writing. So having these resources ready at point of use, ready to go, is really helpful, and students appreciate that connectivity, and teachers really appreciate that efficiency in that we are utilizing some of those same text sets for different instructional purposes. When we are talking about getting ready to plan for an upcoming week of instruction or an upcoming genre study within Wonders, we're going to see a suggested lesson plan page. And what's really fantastic here about the planning resources and tools for you is that we do take into account flexible teaching and instructional structures within classroom spaces. So for example, if you are somebody that prefers whole group instruction, or if you're somebody that prefers more of a small group workshop model, you can easily alter your lesson plan here to fit that instructional setup within your classroom space. So here you're going to see those little orange arrows on this page. And so those lessons are geared towards being very flexible in terms of either using them in a whole group setting or transitioning that into a small group on an as needed basis for students, or on a modified or differentiated level for students. The other pathway that you'll see here is that there are two rows going across where you have a core pathway. So if you are coming up into a busy school week, maybe there's some assemblies or there's other campus-wide events that are taking place or other events that are making it a little bit of a different pacing within your week of instruction, the core pathway would be a great place to really focus in on your instruction that week. And then that optional pathway is really great for needs-based instruction, but can also be utilized if you have a full week and you don't have those interesting changes to your schedule. You can obviously use the core and the optional as you see fit for the needs of your students. The other aspect that I really appreciate here on this suggested lesson plan is that when we are planning for our small group instruction, we're going to see that instead of expecting that you are meeting with every single group every single day, we see that we have a grouping of available resources to help target students that are needing a little extra support through the approaching group. And then also, how can we help reach students at the extension level or some additional practice for on-level students? And so this isn't necessarily about meeting every single group every single day, but what is available to help this group of students meet their needs and really get them to that mastery and proficiency level. And so you'll be able to see all of those resources there. Now, I know I've been seeing a lot of activity over here in the chat box. And so we do have some information Trish just put in there that there are some other webinars running. And so there is a register link there. But for those of you that have been finding that chat box, that's fantastic. If you haven't yet, this is a great opportunity for you to type into the chat something that you've noticed that we've talked about that would benefit you as a teacher, or something that you are eager to learn more about in our time together today to help with student practice and mastery as well. So we're going to take about 1 minute here, just add something that you are excited about that you've already seen, that you would like to make sure that you remember as we continue on with our training today. Excellent. So a lot of you are getting putting in there into the chat that you're excited about having those small group resources, and that you are also excited about that flexible instructional pathway. Excellent. Suggested lesson plans. Perfect. And then, yes, small group instruction. Absolutely. Writing strategies. Excellent resources. And of course, that flexible instruction piece. Perfect. Okay, so, technology-based, excellent. And we will definitely be talking about that as well. All right, and then the English learner scaffolded text, we'll be talking about that as well. Perfect, okay. So let's continue forward. We're going to be talking about that instructional path a little bit more in depth at this time. And what we're really going to be looking at here is this idea again that it is flexible. And so as we're looking at these resources, just know that you can structure this in a workshop type model, where maybe you're focusing a little bit more on a small group instructional pathway. But you can, of course, use this in more of a whole group structure as well. So we're going to see resources and instruction that incorporate interactive read alouds, shared reading, anchored and paired text, as well as foundational skills. Language arts and writing and small group are also what we are incorporating typically on a daily basis. But again, those small groups are going to be that variable as to how frequently you would like to incorporating those. In the Reading Writing Companion, this is that student edition. It is an interactive write-in text for the students. We want them reading with a pencil. And so you'll see that element here as we go through this student piece. When we are taking a look at instruction for our students, we really focus in on what's called the close reading routine. And this is a really efficient way to maximize student exposure to texts, as well as being able to take that deeper instructional dive that we need to take them on in order to really gain mastery of content standards. So our first initial read through of the text, we're going to really be focusing on what's there, what is happening in the story. We're going to identify those key ideas and details, and we're going to possibly be taking some notes and retelling as we go through. This is really a surface level exposure to the text. Once students have an idea about what the text is about, we're now going to be going back and focusing on specific sections of the text for reread lessons, where we're going to be analyzing the text craft and structure of the text. And this is going to be a much deeper look at specific portions of the text. Oftentimes, whenever we see reread, we think that students are going to be rereading the entire selection. And for this specific purpose of instruction, we are actually going to spotlight certain sections of text to highlight that instruction. The final step in this close reading routine is to integrate. And that's really going to be that transfer element where students are going to take what they are learning about within this text or the different strategies and concepts, and they're now going to apply that into a new form of literature or other media, such as murals and fine art pieces and things like that, to make connections and then hopefully to inspire action either for themselves in their own life and their own family in your own classroom, but perhaps campus-wide or in your communities. And so as we go through any of our text pieces that we're looking at, whether it's in small group, whether it's a shared read or that anchor text, we're going to be guiding students through the close reading routine. In first grade here, we're seeing an example of a shared read experience where students are going to, again, read with a pencil. So we're going to guide students through annotation practice that is really application of their foundational skills. So in this particular week, students are focusing on short A, as well as a high frequency word of not, and we're asking them to refer to the text and really find instances of those foundational skills being applied here in this instructional text. As we look at upper grade levels, we're going to find that students are still experiencing that shared read with reading with a pencil. And so in the margins, we're going to be asking them questions about interesting words for themselves, things that they are noticing that would be something that they might want a little more information about or something that they're curious about. We're also going to be asking students the read questions of that close reading routine, where we're asking them to actually annotate the text to answer these questions and provide that text evidence that is needed in order to explain their thinking. And so here we're going to see that students are either underlining or boxing the text, highlighting, but then we also have reread questions. And you can tell right away that this is going to definitely get deeper in that we're asking students how the author shows us causes and effects of the natural processes. And so these are definitely going to be a little bit more involved and specific to the content that is being read on that page. Once students have gone through that shared read, we now have mini lessons to focus on targeted skills and strategies and standards that we need our students to learn and master and apply to new literature. And so in this particular example, we are looking at comparing and contrasting as it relates to this shared read. And so we're going to see a gradual release of responsibility here, where the teacher has a bit of more focus there at the beginning with the I do portion. And then a we do together is going to be that finding textual evidence. And in this case, we are looking at graphic organizers. And so here we're seeing that Venn diagram where we're able to show how things are different and alike in this particular selection. And then we have a you do portion where students are going to collaborate with their peers and apply, compare and contrast ideas and this topic into a different section of the shared read. And so we're going to see a lot of scaffolding and instruction and support here within the shared read experience. When we get to see the vocabulary here within the reading writing companion, we're going to find that the vocabulary is not brought to the student's attention in a typical dictionary style format. We're going to see that these words are brought to the student's attention in the form of a contextual based sentence. And so students will be able to gather meaning from the text based on, or the vocabulary word based on the sentence that is written here. In addition to that, we're asking students to further develop a deeper understanding and mastery of this vocabulary word by asking them specific questions that relate to connections to prior ideas or themselves personally. And so students are really going to be able to get a little bit more personalized understanding of their vocabulary words, as well as a variety of vocabulary topics. So here we're seeing multi-meaning words. We might see other aspects of literature here, or other aspects of vocabulary, and giving students an opportunity to practice with that your turn section there as well. Okay, and so again, finding textual evidence is going to be important here, and we'll see that as part of our vocabulary as well. Once students have gone through their shared read experiences with the mini lessons as well as the vocabulary, you're going to see a respond to reading. And the respond to reading is going to include a prompt based on that shared read. And again, this is going to include some scaffolding from the teacher to really provide that instruction on what it means to respond to the reading. But what I really appreciate about these pages is that we remind students of the grammar, as well as other quick tips and strategies, such as sentence starters, sentence frames, other things to consider as they are responding to this text. This is a really great way to incorporate that grammar right at point of use in their writing selections, which is why we have grammar in the first place, is to make sure that our readers can understand what we're writing. And so based on content that's already been covered with grammar, what your focus is for that week as well, we'll see these grammar connections brought in right at this point. Now, all of this is available for students to access electronically. And what's great here is that not only is this for students to access, interact with, and type directly onto these pages, but it is also available for you on your side as part of your daily presentation option through Wonders, but then also you can this resource and project electronically electronic if you would like. So in thinking about what we've seen as it pertains to shared reading, please feel free to add in questions or other comments into the chat about what you are noticing and what you're excited about. All right, and it sounds like some of the sound might be lagging just a little bit. I'm wondering if that has to do with there's a lot of people on our session today. So I do apologize that the voice is lagging behind what you're seeing on the screen. I am seeing that people are excited about the idea of reading with a pencil, that textual evidence component being built in. Okay, absolutely. And that resource is something that for the life of the adoption would be replaced every year. So we definitely encourage and are expecting that students are writing within their text Okay, and that respond to reading, absolutely. And it is super interactive. Thank you for pointing that out. Our reading content and our lessons are highly interactive. Perfect. And appreciating that link to prior learning, especially as we were just talking about with the grammar and resurfacing that at the point that students would need to apply that. Loving annotations and that close reading routine, that surface, deeper exploration, and then transfer. Excellent. And then, of course, that vocabulary as well as deepened after the text reading. Perfect. And then, of course, that flexibility about being able to access electronically or in print and really having that flexibility based on student need, your need, or just being able to provide some variety for students. Excellent. And then, of course, absolutely being student-centered is important as well. Thank you so much for sharing. Let's go ahead and continue on to see how that shared read is really what is going to help our students access the anchor text. And so that shared read is where we're going to see it be a little bit more teacher heavy. This is really where the instruction is taking place. That's the teach and model portion. And then we get to our anchor text, which is really practicing and applying what we did in the shared read, but in a larger, more involved text, and perhaps a little bit more independently or collaboratively for the students. So if we were taking a look at a 2-week genre study, which is what we would see in second grade and beyond, this is that structure. And so we would spend our first 2 days really diving into that shared read, but then notice now we're going to be spending a good chunk of time focusing on a deep exploration of that anchor text and the paired selection and the experiences that go with that. And so when we're talking about this anchor text, we're really talking about that anthology. And that anthology is going to be a collection of authentic literature that are what I kind of refer as real books. These are books you can find online in libraries. You may already notice some of them as being resources that you have accessible on your campuses. And so this is really just a collection and a grouping so that it's easy for students to manage into one hardback book. Now in kindergarten, what we're looking at for our anchor text is actually going to be a big book. And you guessed it, this big book is available electronically as well. So it can be something that you're projecting and displaying, and that you're also able to interact with those texts electronically with highlighting, annotation tools, as well as audio support. Now, all the other grades, you also have access to these texts electronically with your anthology. And so you know that you can also highlight, annotate, and have the audio version of these texts as well. In your teacher's guide, you're going to see a very clear instruction that includes your objectives and any additional academic language our students are going to need to be made aware of, but also that gradual release with a model, guided practice and practice. You'll see plenty of suggested teacher think alouds, as well as suggested student responses. And then also suggestions for things like anchor charts, graphic organizers that would be helpful along the way. Okay. And so that anchor text, as that kind of changes as we look at an upper grade, we're going to see that we're still following that close reading routine, and that will be built right into your teacher's edition. But what I also appreciate here as we are looking through, that we do see differentiated approaches to reading of the text. And so we're going to see support for approaching, on and beyond, as well as English language learners. And you're seeing that there in that lower or right-hand side under the earthquakes picture there. And so giving students an opportunity to either listen to the selection or perhaps being able to read independently or with a partner might be some different ways that students can have access to that text, but you'll see those different suggestions right when you need them. Now, as we're taking a look here at these anchor texts, we're going to see what are called ACT questions or prompts. And ACT is going to stand for accessing complex text. These are going to be features of the text that are not necessarily identified by a computer system that would be leveling that text. And so this is going to address concerns about prior knowledge, connection of ideas, specific vocabulary or organization. And so right throughout the text, you're going to find little prompts, discussion features to really make that text accessible to students, even if these complexity issues are there. So it's really about getting students access to complex level text at their grade level or just beyond, and providing the scaffolded support that they need to be able to really maximize their usage and understanding of that text. Okay. Now, as we continue through, again, we're going to be seeing support for that close reading routine. And so we're going to have reread prompts as well as questions within the student's reading companion that is going to focus on text evidence. And so what we might see, we have an example up here right now where we have a prompt for our students, and then we're going to take them through a talk, cite, write format, where students are able to collaboratively discuss with their peers what their thoughts are in response to that prompt. They're able to gather their evidence in a graphic organizer structure, and then utilize that evidence in a written response that does have that sentence starter to get them going with what would be an appropriate way to respond to that prompt. So again, this is another way where we can start to take what we were doing within that shared read and apply it into this responding to text, this analytical writing. Okay. Now, this anchor text is going to be the longest, most involved selection that students are reading throughout the course of their genre study. It is followed up by a paired selection. And notice that here we're looking at a personal narrative as our paired selection, whereas our genre focus over here is expository text. And so what we want to expose students to is within the same theme, we're looking at two different genres and able to synthesize that information across those texts and still being able to compare and contrast. And so students will get that practice each genre study week with the anchor text and the paired selection. So in this teacher's edition setup, you are still going to see the read questions, the reread questions, as well as those accessing complex text features. Now this paired selection is going to be significantly shorter than your anchor text. And so yet again, another difference in text format and structure so that our students get practice with that synthesizing of information across the text. Okay, and then ACT is accessing complex text. Okay, and so again, identifying those aspects of the text that students may be struggling with because of the complexity features. And so really providing those discussions and prompts around being able to highlight those complexity components and addressing them with students so that they can really master that text. Now that paired selection is either going to be printed in its entirety or partially within the student's reading writing companion. And so again, that reading with a pencil and that annotation practice is going to be taking place here, where students are going to be asked to do things like draw boxes, circle, underline, and highlight, as well as discuss their findings with a partner and provide some written responses as well. Even at the kindergarten level, we are asking students to annotate, and in their situation, we're looking at circling and boxing perhaps photographs or other illustrations from the text, but the idea that the answers that they're looking for and the answers that they're giving are rooted in the text itself really puts that emphasis and that practice on finding textual evidence, referring back to the text in order to really clarify and explain thinking and ideas. All right, and I know we had a few questions in the chat, so I am going to be going through and taking a look at those questions. So we're going to take about 1 minute. Feel free to add into the chat things that you've seen so far that are exciting for you or that are going to be beneficial for your students, and something that you want to make sure that you remember as we continue forward in our session today. Excellent. All right. So I'm seeing a lot of call outs about that ACT, that accessing complex text. Excellent. And then those DOK levels being implemented right into the lessons. And then also those comprehension strategies. Perfect. Now, some of the questions into getting students access to the text that are maybe a struggling reader. And so some of the things that you could do is you could have students either listen to the text on their login. All of the texts do have the audio support there, as well as perhaps doing echo or choral reading, so that they're getting that practice in a live classroom setting as well. So it does give some different options there for how students can access those texts. Perfect. And loving the annotation. Perfect. All right, let's continue forward. I do want to address our foundational skills structures, which here at first we're going to be looking at K2. When we're talking about foundational skills at the kindergarten and second grade level, we're kindergarten through second grade level, we're really focusing on daily explicit instruction that allows opportunities to check for success and differentiate moving forward based on student mastery of content. And so we're going to see a phonics skills trace so we can see what's coming up and what we've been covering, as well as that daily review, your explicit mini lesson instruction that can be done whole group or small group, and then also the differentiation with independent practice as well as small group instruction there. Now, regarding your materials, you're going to see a variety of digital resources that include dances and songs, but also physical manipulatives such as sound spelling cards, the lenticular cards that show how mouths move to make those particular sounds, visual vocabulary cards, sound spelling workboards. And so there's a lot that students can physically manipulate during small group time or small group instruction that you can use or students can be using during student-led activities. A lot of these resources also have digital game exposure, so students could be working a little bit more independently. Now, the flow and structure of these lessons is still going to follow that gradual release of responsibility. So we have a model guided practice and practice type experience. And then you're also going to see that the spelling itself is also going to be differentiated. So if you were looking to provide differentiated lists to your students, you do have an approaching and a beyond level list of those spelling words. Now, as we are thinking about these foundational skills and applying them into literature, know that there are decodable readers available at K2 that do focus on your phonics skill set. Now, when we're talking about these decodable readers, know that there are 2 selections for each phonics skill that you are working on in the course of your week. And so you will see a fiction as well as a nonfiction selection here in the decodable readers, which again is super helpful for students to apply those foundational skills and really get some fluency practice with those structures. These can be done either independently at a workshop station stop. They can also be used, of course, in a small group setting, and they are available electronically for you to project and display and do a choral or an echo read, or able to have students just kind of see that projection electronically as well. In addition to that, all grade levels, not just kindergarten through 2nd grade, have a practice book that has differentiated spelling practice as well as practice pages for your different foundational skill elements, such as phonological phonemic awareness, phonics, high frequency words, and take-home stories. And so these are great single page foldable books that can be sent home that do focus on your high frequency words and already covered foundational skill phonics topics. There are, of course, those digital electronic games. And so we're going to see a lot of independent options for students to be able to do electronically, either in classrooms during a workshop model station rotation, or at home for some additional practice as well. Now, in 3rd grade and up, we also have foundational skills that focus on phonics and fluency, reading multisyllabic words, and some of those different components that we would be looking at for those upper grade students in a word study type approach. And this is going to be like a once a week type lesson that you're incorporating either as needed with small groups, or it could also be a whole group instructional component as well. And so you do have a lot of options there in terms of how that's used. But then in addition, if students need more support at any grade level, K2, or even here we're looking at a 3-6 structure, there are additional phonics and word study lessons. So depending on what particular topic your students are struggling with, you will see additional lessons in here that follow that same gradual release of responsibility lesson plan. And then there will be a printable page for students as well. So there's a lot of additional support there. If you are needing handwriting practice as well, that is also included as part of Wonders, and those can be writing, and we're really incorporating all the different aspects that we would be expecting for writing and language arts, of course. So we've seen that we have that analytical writing, so we have the process writing, daily practice opportunities for grammar, spelling, vocabulary, and then you're also going to see research and inquiry incorporated as well. And so let's take a little bit of a closer look here at the process writing. In kindergarten, we're looking at even units only for that writing process. And so again, taking what students have been reading about within their genre and taking that into that writing process within their reading writing companion space is great. And so we'll see that continuing here in through 1st grade, and taking what students are reading about and then applying that into their writing process. All of that is already included in the student's reading writing companion. So you don't have to go and make copies of those writing instruction pages and those practice components for students. When we're looking at 2nd grade and up, we're looking at a 4-week study of the process writing, where we're taking 2 different expert models over the course of that time to take students from expert model, planning and drafting, through revising, editing, and publishing. Along the way, you'll see there at the very bottom in that green band, differentiated supports depending on how you wanted to incorporate that instruction for grammar, spelling, and handwriting, both printed and digital. So again, based on student need, you can be dipping in and out of those resources, or of course, having students access some of those game-like experiences online. Some different samples here, what we would see is in this particular example, we're looking at the features of a compare and contrast essay. Notice that we're referring to that literature anthology selection of spiders. And so we're really going to be taking students through the features and then analyzing that expert model that they're already familiar with, because we've been covering that during our reading portion of our literacy block. We're going to be asking students questions and doing some analysis of this text as it pertains to their writing at this time. So we're going to see specific sections of the text that students will be rereading and then answering questions about those components and elements. The student supports that we're going to see do include things like checklists and rubrics along the way. And so revising checklists, editing checklists, right there at the point that students would need them printed or ready to go in their reading writing companion. You're also going to find rubrics available to you that you can either use as we've created them, or of course you can edit those as you need to. Your language arts instruction is daily, explicit, and connected. And so you will see daily lessons for grammar, spelling, and vocabulary, as well as practice book pages. And like we've been talking about, some of those online interactive games as well. Okay, and so in thinking about foundational skills and the language arts components, feel free to add into that chat box some of the things that you're excited about, some of the things that are going to be beneficial for your students. Excellent. So really appreciating the time that we're not rushing through those writing pieces. We're really diving deep at each level to provide instruction and giving students an opportunity to apply that understanding into their own writing. The digital game exposure, absolutely, and incorporating those decodable readers. That component there is also going to help make your shared read and your anchor texts more accessible to students if they've been able to practice a bit more on those foundational skill applications. Excellent. Writing process is absolutely perfect. The take-home reading selections so that students are getting some additional practice at home. And so families are aware of what those objectives are. Clear, specific, efficient scaffolding of that writing process. Love that. And just super efficient that we're utilizing texts that students are already familiar with, that are great pieces of literature. That's why we've included them. And now being able to use that as a model for writing. Absolutely. Editable rubrics, classroom activities. Perfect. All right. I'm going to go ahead and continue in, let's see. All right. And so if you have students that are struggling and are perhaps reading below grade level, it is still important to provide grade level content access. And so if it makes sense for you and your students to have perhaps that audio version of the text, or like I had mentioned before, even doing an echo or a choral read whole group or in small group is really helpful to give students that support and the confidence if they are a struggling reader, but also providing ample time for them to practice with decodable readers and leveled readers at their own level so that they are able to get a bit more of that fluency practice as well as application of decoding skills and other aspects of reading that they may need to work on to get some of those gaps perhaps filled in so that they are a more proficient reader. Now that we're talking about differentiation, you do have a lot of resources available to you. For example, you do have the small group differentiation built into your teacher's edition with the use of leveled readers. And so in your teacher's guide, you will have step-by-step before, during, and after reading of these texts that you can utilize with in a small group of instruction. And then you also have cards that you can use. And so we'll talk about those here in just a minute, but here we'll see support for the approaching on, beyond, and English learner leveled readers, as well as the paired read that correlates to that. And those paired reads are found within the leveled reader themselves, and that starts in first grade. You'll also have suggestions for leveling up. So as soon as you notice that students are maybe ready for that next level, giving them an opportunity to work with a peer or have access to that level up content is helpful as well. Now, in that idea of that close reading of complex text that we've been talking about with that ACT, the lesson cards are going to be extremely beneficial as you're navigating those leveled readers in incorporating more of that accessing complex text. And so here you'll have some very specific questions that will, of course, make that text more comprehensible and really take a look at those features of complexity. And so those lesson cards are going to be helpful as well. Now, outside of that, you are also going to have skill-based lessons on Beyond and English learning students based on the instruction that was done during whole group in the shared read and other instructional elements there within the course of your genre study or your week. So if I know that my students are still struggling with high frequency words or decoding words with long A, here I have additional lessons that follow that I do, we do, you do structure that we're already familiar and comfortable with, and giving students an extra opportunity for instruction as well as practice. And so we're seeing that here. Now, any of these little lessons that we're seeing here, these mini lessons that have that tier 2 circle icon on them, that's where you'll have a reminder that that is also available in those orange covered books that have those additional lessons that you can pull from to help meet the needs of your students. Now, across these books, there are hundreds of additional lessons that focus on comprehension, phonics and word study, fluency, writing, and vocabulary. These are meant to be a dip in, dip out. So if you know that students are struggling with particular phonics topics or particular comprehension skills, you can jump right to that lesson, utilize just that lesson with your students in either whole group or small group or individualized settings, and then give them that practice opportunity to really show that they're understanding and moving forward. All right, excellent. And so asking about how you can get these guides, these are all available electronically, which I will be showing you here in just a moment. Now, in addition to these leveled readers, decodable readers, and these additional mini lessons, you also have leveled workstation activity cards. You'll have multiple options throughout the course of your genre study that encompass all 4 topics of reading, writing, phonics, word study, and then either science or social studies, depending on which area you are extending to for your nonfiction selections. The front of these cards has a blue bordered activity that is your on level, but then on the other side, you're going to see differentiated activities that focus on that same topic for approaching and beyond level students. So depending on if your students need a little extra support, scaffolding, or whether they are ready to extend their thinking there. All right, and so in thinking about that differentiation, that small group instruction with those leveled readers and an assortment of mini lessons, as well as a digital content, I am going to be taking us online here in just a moment. But if you did have that chat box pulled up, go ahead and add in what you are excited about in terms of small group differentiation. Yes, those intervention booklets, perfect. I'm going to head over to our live Connected platform. I am going to hop here into 3rd grade, but please know that what I'm about to show you pertains to all grade levels, K6. And so here in the Teachers Edition, when I am looking here at my main page, let me pull up, I'm going to go back to Unit 1, Week 1, just to make things easy here. I'm going to see right away, I have my daily presentation here, as well as my planning tools and features, and all of my digital games. And one thing I do like to highlight here in the game section is that not only do you have games where students can practice on their own, but you do also have data collection, more like a little quiz almost. And so you can really see how students are mastering the topic in more of that structured format. Now, as I come up here to this blue bar at the top, I'm going to see that I have a resources section with my drop-down menu, and I can head here into the resource library. this is where I'm going to be able to find all of the resources for instruction in both whole group and small group, and as well as independent learning opportunities as well. So if I was looking for those tier 2 intervention books, I have a whole category here just for tier 2 intervention. I can click in there and I can get access to those orange covered books that have those great mini lessons that are that dip in, dip out approach. But what I can also access here within my resource library includes my leveled readers, my additional student read content. So if I was looking for readers theater, or I was looking for those decodable readers, I can find that in here. I can also find my teacher resources. So my scope and sequence, I can find my teacher edition PDFs in here, as well as some other really great components. And then I also have access to all of my interactive games and activities, as well as multimedia components. Now, as I scroll back up here to the top, just to also let you know, you do have a fantastic planning tool. And we know that flexibility in your implementation is important. And so if I were to come in here to my weekly planner, know that each of my lessons incorporates its own little box. And these are completely movable and flexible. And so if, for example, I get to the end here of my day and we had an assembly or something else that happened and I didn't quite get to this study skill, I can move this over here to the next day and it will then automatically become part of that presentation as well. Okay. Now, as I'm looking here, I'm seeing that some of these are kind of shaded or deactivated. And I know one of the features that some of you were excited about, you indicated in the chat, was having that flexibility of a core pathway versus an options pathway. And so here with the planner options, you can easily turn on that core pathway and it will automatically adjust your presentation to exclude the optional lessons. Now you can still add those back in if you would like at the single mini lesson point, or you can, of course, open that back up to have everything available. You also have options to be flexible within your calendar space here. So if you did need to move things forward or shrink things down into a shorter time period, you do have lots of options and flexibility here within this planning space as well. All right, and so the presentation, if you're wondering about accessing the presentation if you were instructing with students, if I go back up here to my Wonders icon in the top left, I get back to my main dashboard page. And so when I hover here over the today's presentation, you'll get a little pop-up banner that allows you to click go. It will open up in a new tab or window, depending on your internet settings. And see that top bar a little bit more. Okay, and so what I can do is we get this calendar activity, okay, but this is my typical presentation screen where I have access to all of my resources and I can either click through this way or I can just click forward and back here through my lesson resources. Okay. I do want to be respectful for everyone's time, and it looks like we are right at our full hour of our presentation today. So what we're going to do is one more chat box option. Some of the components that we've explored digitally, I know it was just a few minutes, but what are you excited about in terms of that digital experience? And then, of course, if you do have to head out, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you all so very much. And if that electronic version of the recording of this is something that you are looking for, we can absolutely share that with you as well.
Thank you so much, Jessica.
You're very welcome.
I learned a lot about Wonders myself, to be honest.
Great. I'm glad it was helpful.
Yes. And I will just go ahead, share my screen, unless you can leave, of course. But if anyone has any question for Jessica, let us know. We're more than happy to stay back and answer a few questions. If anyone has any questions, please drop it in the chat box, or actually the Q&A box. I think the chat box is more like Thank you. How do we receive
Yes,
the
absolutely.
certificate? A great question. You will get that certificate via email. And in case you need to contact us, our email address is marketing.mia@mheducation. If you have any questions, or if you're looking to get in touch with a rep in your region or a learning consultant, you need a sample perhaps, please let us know at marketing.mia@mheducation.com. Will you send us the recorded session? Yes, we will email you the recording of this session. Any other questions? Thank you so much. Take care, and we'll see you tomorrow. No, not tomorrow. Sorry, we'll see you next week. I've dropped the link in the chat box. I can do that once more for everyone. We have a couple of webinars running next week. Check out this registration page where we have them. Until next time, and have a great weekend. Bye. Thank you, Jessica. Bye.
All right, thanks. Have a good one. Bye-bye.